Hello, I'm the Pink Phantom. Welcome to my podcast, where we will go deep into the lair of the purple worm instead of down into the rabbit hole, where we'll voyage into the astral realm of my mind and explore the verse of nerd culture. This is Phantom Thoughts. In this episode, I want to talk about campaigns. Campaigns are a big part of the OSR, and a lot of the OSR, that with its do-it-yourself kind of attitude, is game masters building their own campaigns. And there are different styles of campaigns that you'll hear mentioned when you talk about OSR. Some people talk about dungeon crawls. Some people talk about hex crawls. Some people talk about the sandbox. And mostly, they'll talk about avoiding the railroad, avoiding railroading people. So, the campaign is simply, it's when the parties come to play. It's the world that they play in. It could be a series of modules if you're using pre-published material. It could be from a setting book, or if you're operating out of a setting, or it could be fully formed from the game master's ideas, or it could be a primarily randomly generated using random tables and random ideas. So the sandbox tends to be the freest part, the idea of the freest type of campaign, where the players are really deciding, they're kind of leading the game, and the game master is following them. He may drop little hints, have little pieces of a world in place. Some of them may be clearly defined. Some of them may just be indefinitely defined. They may be rumors. They may be just tavern talk. Something to get the players interested. Or the players may decide to go their own way. They may ask, can we go over here and try to build a kingdom? Can we find a place that's under attack by goblins? And the game master follows that. And the sandbox style is, you take your toys to the sandbox and you make it up as you go along. A lot more randomness, a lot more on the fly building of the world, and a collaboration really between the players and the game master, but also very demanding on the game master. A hex crawl is very similar to a sandbox. It's generally a little more organized. There's a map, and there are probably a lot of key locations, but the players are free to go where they will, and they're free to travel whatever path they want to get there. And those paths may end up in random encounters of various types, whether it's with NPCs or whether with monsters roaming the land or creatures attempting to waylay unwary merchants or travelers. And, the travel direction is completely up to the party, and there's a lot of exploration options, a lot of wilderness, in addition to settled areas. Now, dungeon crawls, and I'm going to include point crawls, which are kind of the overworld version of dungeon crawls. Because in a dungeon, you've got defined rooms, usually in a defined location, and defined paths between them. You may have lots of options in a dungeon. The best ones are not just a long hallway with rooms and encounters among them in a straight line, but there is a lot of more defined where places are and how you get there. And the point crawl is the overland version of the same thing. We say, here are the points that you can get to, and here are the ways you can get there. And it's a way to kind of shrinks down what the game master has to prepare, while still allowing a lot of flexibility and a lot of freedom for the players to decide what they want to do and what kind of impact they want to try to have on the world. Now, all these different types, the sandbox, the hex crawl, the dungeon crawl, the point crawl, are meant to be ways to avoid railroading, which is, you've got a plot, it's pre-plotted, and it's one way, it's like a train on tracks, and you've got guardrails to keep you from going away. If you've ever played some older, especially 80s and 90s type RPGs, when you were roaming the wilderness in those games, a lot of times you could only still go the four cardinal directions, north, south, east, west, and you had what essentially looked like a wall of trees on either side of you, guiding you to the destinations that were available. And it's really talked down, railroading. It's a negative connotation for the way to run an adventure or campaign, because it's basically just trying to steer you through a series of events to what is essentially a final boss battle, a final confrontation, maybe a final negotiation, depending on the type of adventure. And it's generally played as there's not choices for the players to make. There's one path. And, and a lot of times the idea of the quantum ogre is brought up, where there's an ogre and the party's going to encounter the ogre. And even if you give them the appearance of choice, you got 3 doors, guess what? The ogre's behind whichever door you pick. You're going to open that door, you're going to fight the ogre. But there could be some positives, not to railroading specifically, but to a narrower path of adventure. And I think a lot of the what they call adventure paths, you've got all these books, but you can't plan for everything in this series of modules. There's an ending you're trying to get to. And a lot of it has to do with player buy-in. You're trying to go follow this story arc along its way. You're developing your character. There's going to be side quests and things, but you are ultimately trying to get to that destination. But the players want to get there. That's really the difference between railroading and just a very focused adventure. And this is the path that you see in pretty much all other forms of media that have to deal with fantasy, whether it's a book or a series of books or a movie or a series of movies or a serial television series, where the characters are starting in one place, they're going to end up in another place, and it's just the story of the trials and the paths that they take to get there. And sometimes the characters in the show or the movie, they'll split up and they'll go in different directions, and they'll end up together again at the end, or some of them will end up at the end and the others will have an effect on the world to help get them there. So this is, if you're trying to recreate the Lord of the Rings or something or a similar type of adventure, you're going to be, for lack of a better term, a certain amount of railroading, because you have a place you want to get. But again, it's the thing where if the players want, if they pick a quest is put in front of them, whether it's talked about in a session 0 or leading up to starting a campaign, or whether it's something in a campaign, they choose to do this and they want to end up in this one place doing this one thing. All paths are going to get you there. And from the outside, that may look like railroading, but from within the campaign, it could be a lot of fun. But all of these types have their own strengths and weaknesses. Some of them are harder on the game master. Some of them give more choice to the players, at least initially. But at some point, a choice is going to be made. And when you make that choice, as you go through the obstacles that you face as a party, it's going to look, possibly from the outside, like you're being railroaded, when in fact, you're just having fun. And that's going to do it for another episode of Phantom Thoughts. If you have any feedback you'd like to leave, you can contact me by leaving a voice message at anchor.fm/the-pink-phantom, or you can send an email to thepinkphantom1@gmail.com, or you can contact me on Twitter @thepinkphantom. The music in this episode was Strength of the Titans and Late Night Radio by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license from creativecommons.org/licenses/by/4.0.